Who's there?
Stay right there.
How many of you are there?
Just me, man, all right? Just let me go, please. Okay, I swear to God.
Hello everyone, my name is Jake Smith, and this is From the Cinema. I hope everyone is having a delightful spooky ghost month. Fall is one of my favorite times of the year, and I happen to love Halloween. I thought it would be appropriate to review a great horror film this week. Horror is a fantastic genre, probably one of the best, as it taps into our collective horrors, be they visceral or more broadly societal. Even the most asinine of horror movies cannot help but contribute to the filmic dialogue surrounding both the genre of horror and what horror has the ability to say to us or make us feel. Unfortunately for all of us, I ended up watching Don't Breathe, which I didn't particularly care for. Don't Breathe tells the story of three young robbers who live in Detroit, each with their own reasons to rob. Rocky, played by Jane Levy, wants to escape her neglectful mother and boyfriend. Alex, played by Dylan Minetti, wants stability, and Money, played by Daniel Zavato, wants, well, money. They decide to rob a retired Army vet who is blind and is sitting on a heap of cash, thanks to a settlement involving the death of his daughter. After breaking in, though, they find out the hard way that the blind man is not going down without a fight, and then he has his own twisted secrets of his own. The film is directed by Fede Alvarez, who recently directed the Evil Dead remake. He also wrote it in conjunction with Rodo Sayaguez. The first red flag for me came up in the first 20 minutes. Alvarez attempts to assert a message about our current economic anxieties, setting the film in Detroit where whole neighborhoods are swallowed by the landscape. There's already a political move on the part of the director to touch on our crumbling infrastructure, not to mention that the three robbers lash out against wealthy homes and belong themselves to the working class. The beginning of the film stuffs in these thematic threads with some of the most egregious on-the-nose writing, not to mention that whatever it has to say on these anxieties is rather empty. At this point, I think we should put a moratorium on horror films set in Detroit. These films not only fail to say anything about our current economic stratification, but also fail to motivate any sort of social action. It becomes, in a sense, poverty porn. The last great film, really, to examine Detroit's economic struggle was the masterpiece film RoboCop, directed by Paul Verhoeven. The film is still relevant today as satire, while Don't Breathe cannot even make the most obvious of points. As with many of these so-called thrillers, any nuanced critique or thematic focus is chucked out the window as soon as the thrills creep through the door. Don't Breathe clearly pulls from exploitation films such as Straw Dogs and Last House on the Left, using transgressive elements tied to violence and sex in order to thrill and provoke us as an audience. Alvarez is competent behind the camera, framing each character at the edges of the screen in order to keep a sense of danger continually present throughout the film. I just wish I could say that Alvarez works beyond mere competence, but unfortunately any transgressive element of the film is neutered. The most frustrating aspect of this is that Alvarez focuses almost entirely on his characters and never allows a coherent sense of space to be developed. The house is explored rather intimately as the characters travel upstairs, downstairs, the basement, and even the air vents on the roof. But at no point is the space constructed or pieced together for us. The most thrilling part of the film is never knowing who or what is going to appear out of the shadows, and by not creating a said sense of space, Alvarez strips away any potential for tension. I can't help but compare this film to this year's remake or release of Green Room. Green Room, directed by Jeremy Saulnier, which features the late Anton Yelchin, Imogen Poots, and Patrick Stewart, details a punk rock group that gets trapped in a neo-Nazi punk club after uncovering a murder. Green Room is effective not only because of its tight narrative construction, but also because Saulnier can create an intimate sense of space. Much of the film takes place in the titular green room of the club, and as a result, we get to see every nook and cranny of the room, not to mention the whole club. The characters in Green Room adapt to their situations and make use of the space they are contained in both helpful and harmful ways. This is lacking in Don't Breathe, where characters barely adapt to the space they're in at all. Saulnier also is able to subvert expectations in genre enough to not only seek visceral thrills, but to create a unique examination of how bodies are laid to waste under greed. All the deaths in the film are tied to the drug business Patrick Stewart's character, the neo-Nazi club owner, and as a result, we become more horrified not only by the carnage, but by the seeming meaninglessness of the carnage. Green Room speaks to our economic anxieties with a much more nuanced and empathetic way compared to Alvarez's more juvenile film. To Alvarez's credit, the film is never boring. There is one sequence I found nearly effective, when our characters are all in the basement and the blind man switches off all the lights, turning the space pitch black. It is a thrilling moment, but because Alvarez is playing things safe, the sequence is only a loud distraction. Perhaps the film could have found a way to create a sense of empathy for our blind antagonist, creating this place completely dark, save for the muzzle blast of the gun as it goes off. Alvarez unfortunately lights the scene for us, and any interesting formal element contained within is pitched in favor for formal competence. Exploitation films at their best are scrappy and rough, which helps enhance the more transgressive content. Alvarez ignores this instinct. I personally would give this film a 4 out of 10. I would not really recommend the film unless you're looking to burn an hour and a half with mild thrills and banal subject matter. If anything, I would recommend the superior Green Room. I really would also recommend watching exploitation films that use their transgressive material to positive ends. Some of the most interesting exploitation films I've seen include Thriller, A Cruel Picture, and Cannibal Holocaust. Each of these films are rough in their own ways, utilizing some of the most disturbing imagery ever put to screen. But amid the horrific imagery is some of the most daring aesthetic choices and rather pertinent thematic subtext. Don't Breathe, on the other hand, is banality meant to pacify the viewer. If you get a chance, follow me on Twitter at JakeInLimbo. I don't post good tweets, but I'd be more than happy to subject myself to your comments or complaints. Thank you for watching From the Cinema. I'm Jake Smith, and I hope you have a happy Halloween.
Now you're gonna see what I see.